Welcome to August's Bayou Reefkeeping Tank of the Month. This month we're going out to Mandeville to visit Brian Barraco-des Bordes. He runs aquaculture aquariums. We're very excited to visit Brian and understand a little bit about what the aquaculture is all about. Brian, thank you so much for inviting us out here to see your setup and to see a little bit about what the aquaculture aquarium has now become. Run out of what I think is actually a really cool setup, and you've made me jealous about that. So we're here today. We're hopefully going to learn a little bit about what you got going on here, but I want to start with some background. So what got you started in reef tanking and ultimately in wanting to do a business around aquarium and coral selling?
Mm-hmm. So first off, I want to thank you for coming out here. It's an honor to be on this. What got me into it, it's kind of a somber story that turns out great, right? So my grandfather died a few years ago, and he was probably the closest person to me, the father figure in my life. And I was struggling to cope with his death. So one of the things, growing up that he always had fish tanks. Now he did saltwater, he did freshwater. He was predominantly into breeding angelfish in freshwater.
Oh, wow.
So what I kind of did was I wanted to have something that reminded me of him that I could take care of. Right after he passed away, I moved to Texas, moved to North Dallas. While being in Texas, they have every saltwater store that you could think of. And I said, you know what, it's time to get back into reefing, even though he was a freshwater guy. As I got into it, I really started to realize that there's a lot of product out there, but I didn't feel like as many people cared about the quality. And that was something that I became very passionate about, with corals especially, was the quality of the product that's going into your tank. And ultimately, aquaculturing is one of my favorite things because we can also help with ocean sustainability, right? We're not constantly harvesting from the ocean. Instead, we can do it from our tanks. And, eventually we'll get to a point to where everything will be aquacultured. But that takes years to build up to.
Awesome. So did you start with a personal tank then?
So I started with one big frag tank. I had my personal tank, and then I had a large frag tank, and that's how I started the business. Got into it. Everything's expensive in this hobby. So,
oh, yeah.
You have to build your way up to it. Everything that I have now, it's years of accumulation, and constantly piecing things together, repiecing it together, different things like that, But yeah, I started off with 110 gallons and moved my way up.
So what do you have here today in terms of gallonage? Do you know roughly?
Yeah, so it's not as crazy as you would think. I probably run about 600 gallons out of here.
And is that display or does that include, sump and
it's
all that?
It's going to include the sump as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so got a few tanks. I used to have more, but I kind of condensed when I moved to this location. So running about 600 gallons right now, and I always have plans to add more tanks.
So outside of your grandfather, was there anybody else that was kind of a early influence for you in the hobby? Somebody in Dallas that kind of
Not
got
at
you?
all. It was all emotional feelings, and I just decided, it's time to get back into it. I had gotten out of aquarium husbandry for several years because my background is disaster recovery.
Oh, wow.
So I was traveling.
In IT? So technology, disaster
No.
recovery, or is this like
Construction.
construction?
So,
Yeah.
So after a big disaster happens, I would physically go to the site, and I'd have to live there for 6 months, a year. It was 3 years in Puerto Rico. So
Wow.
there was no time for me to be able to, dedicate time to a tank and also keep up with it if I'm going to be gone so much. So after my grandfather passed away, I also decided I was not moving anymore, and I wanted to be around family more.
Awesome. That is a great story. Has there anybody who's been, I'll call it an assist along the way, somebody you would point to and say, well, this person really helped me along the way, kind of learn something or something that you just was an influence to you along the way?
There's a lot of people that are influences. As we go through this, there's so many videos out there. There's so many different ways to do things too, that I've taken a lot of what I've seen, read, spoken about, and kind of morphed into my own theories. But there are two people that I will like to mention. So Ray Evans, that's my business partner. He actually encouraged me to take the leap and do the store. So after I moved back from Dallas, I came back home to Louisiana and, decided, look, I'm going to keep doing this, but let's kind of kick it up a notch. So I went and got a warehouse space and was still selling corals online, but I started getting so many people that wanted to come in. Ray was one of them. He encouraged me to go and get a location, a retail store, and actually make this thing bigger. And he helped me, all of the tanks that you see, he helped me plumb them. Also built these custom stands. He put forth a lot of effort and energy that without him, I would not have been able to make it, The second person that I'd like to mention is Kelsey Guidry. That's another person.
His name comes up a lot here in Louisiana.
Kelsey he's a plethora of information. He's, the thing with aquatics in general is there's no experts in it. Our ocean is vast. We can come up with as many theories as possible. However, the people that are considered more experienced, we've learned a lot more of what not to do, right? So I was able to steer clear of some, issues through advice of Kelsey and also talking to him. He has a great knowledge on lights and PAR, as well as acropora. So acros, I struggled with at first. After talking to Kelsey, man, he got me on the right track, and now I feel like I can raise any acro we have.
Awesome. That is great. So roughly how long have you been back kind of doing the business? When did you?
So I've been doing the business since the beginning of 2021.
Okay.
So started the business then, and it's just been rolling ever since then.
Awesome. And your change, I think I came and visited you right as you were closing the store. It feels like it was probably, 3-4 months ago now.
So it was actually June 1st was our last day. Yep.
So just a couple of months ago now.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about the background. I want to talk, a lot of people want to know, so you're doing aquaculturing here. What do you got for equipment that's allowing you to do all the aquaculture? You said you got 600 gallons of tank. Are they shared or are they separate systems?
So everything's separate. That's one of the key things that I feel is a good redundancy, is to keep your system separate. There are a lot of companies and even some home aquariums that like to plumb everything together. My concern is if you break out with a disease in one tank, will it spread to the others? So I have strategically put certain corals in certain tanks. Also, I've taken my anemones and put them in their own separate tank, because we all know that anemones have a mind of their own and they can definitely destroy some tanks. So I have separated all my systems for that purpose. And that's why you'll see my acropores are in their own tank as well, just because I want to mimic the best case scenario for them to really thrive.
So as I look around here, I think I see 6 separate tanks. Is that basically what you have here? Not counting the turtle tank, unless I'm missing one.
No, I have one more that I haven't set up yet.
Okay.
So we're at 5 right now, but yeah, I'll have another one that'll be set up, and then hopefully we'll get another big frag table right here in the front.
You've got the space for it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more in detail about the equipment. And I'm just going to run down the list of things that I have. Are you using anything for controller? So anything like a Neptune Apex or?
I'm not. So I've been working myself up to the whole hydro system. I love hydros. I believe in it, but it is a little costly, you know. So I've focused for the last few years on really growing the business and growing my inventory and upgrading my equipment. But everything you see here is used. It's all been pieced together except for my lights and my heaters. So everything I went and got secondhand, either resealed it or did water testing and things like that with it. But my next upgrade is going to be into hydros. the controllers, that whole system right there.
That is an adventure into itself. So you
Yes.
mentioned, one of the things you mentioned was lighting. What are you running for lighting over your tanks?
Well, I have to shout out Kelsey again. I use the reflit bars. So kind of a funny story. Kelsey told me that he had these lights, and I was like, man, you know, I want to support somebody local. I'm going to try them out. I tried out the lights and fell absolutely in love with them. Sold every Radeon that I had, AI, got rid of everything, and put all of the reflit bars on all my tanks. Not only is it the best spread, I feel like I get a very even par, but the coloration is like no other. A lot of people ask me, hey, do you saturate your photos? Do you doctor them? No, it's these lights. These lights put out some of the best coloration that's out there, you know, and they're super simple. They turn on and off. There's no ramp up, ramp down. It's just the perfect spectrum that you could possibly use in my eyes.
Well, Kelsey felt that way too as he set up the new tank. So roughly what's your light schedule then for the tanks? Is it the same for all of them, or do you like SPS different than some of the others?
SPS is the only one that's different from all of them. So all the tanks, because I was operating out of a store, I had them coming on at, 10 a.m. every day, and they would turn off at 7:30 p.m. every day. But there's no ramp up, ramp down, so it would be full spectrum, boom, right on, and that would be my photo period throughout the entire day. So some people, they do run a longer photo period. However, that's most tanks that are doing a ramp up, ramp down. When it comes to the SPS, I run a longer photo period. So it starts at 8:30 in the morning and ends at 8:30 at night. So I do a full 12 hours.
And is that full photo period like everything else? So the lights come on full strength at
That's
that
it,
point?
full strength, and keep
they're
on going.
on for the full time. Mm-hmm. And then roughly, so do you have the same lighting over the SPS tanks as you do the other tanks? Just the difference is the length of the photo period?
No, so the SPS tank, I actually run, so Kelsey came up with two different types of the light bars. You have a blue violet, which is your full blue spectrum. You're going to see that on all my frag tanks. It provides a great pop coloration. On my SPS tank, I have 8 total lights, 2 of them being the blue-white. So that's the other variation that Kelsey had. The white spectrum gives you the reds, those green traces, and will help with your SPS growth. So that's the only tank that has any different lighting, but it's very minute and small. But those white lights are very powerful, so that's why I only have 2 of them.
Okay. And so you mentioned PAR readings earlier. What are you running the PAR roughly in the tanks? And obviously the SPS one's going to be different than the other ones.
Yeah, so the majority of the frag tanks, they're running on the sand bed, you're looking between 80 to 100. And on the frag racks themselves, you're looking anywhere from 160 to 200. But that's going to be placement, right? So if you look at the lights that I have, they're directly center in the tank. So as you move closer to the back wall or the front wall, you're going to lose some of that PAR. So I will strategically place certain items that can't handle too much PAR closer to the front of the glass, so it's not, you know, getting
as
beaten
much
with
light, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the SPS tank is getting more PAR.
Oh man, it is. It is. So near the top, you're looking at about 350,
Okay.
Which isn't as high as most people run their SPS tanks. But what I got was some great information from one video that I saw. Reef Bum is the gentleman's name. He's an older guy.
Yeah.
They call him the godfather of SPS tanks. He runs metal halides. He's got a whole system that he runs. But he said one thing that made the most sense to me. And I've actually helped a lot of people with this, with their SPS. The higher the PAR, the higher the nutrients you need to run, because the SPS, it burns it off so rapidly. So if you're going to have lower PAR like I do in some of my tanks, I have to run a lower nutrient load in order to keep the coloration, make sure they're not bleaching out, things like that. And one of the things that I've noticed too is that if I were to sell a piece of SPS Acropora and you put it into another Aquarius tank that's not running as high of a PAR, it can adapt better than, say, I was running 500 PAR on all my SPS, and then somebody wants to put it in their system that's at 150 to 200. It just wouldn't look great. It would start to brown out, things like that. So that helped me get better with SPS and caring for them, as well as it helped the Aquarius that I was able to, you know, offer my acros to have, you know, a better chance of success.
Well, and I can say I've got a couple of your acros in my system.
Yes, sir.
So what are you using for flow then in the tanks? Is it the same? Is it different depending on the tank and the corals?
It's all relatively the same. I do have different return pumps in some of the tanks. Most of them are just, look, it's all simple. It's on and off, and that's basically it, right? So I use some J-Bows. Again, I've pieced together all these tanks over time. So I look for functionality, not necessarily what's the most popular right now, or you know what catches your eye. I just need functionality. So as long as I'm turning over my water 10 times in an hour, you know, following that correct schedule, then I feel good with the flow. But flow, man, that's one of those topics I could talk about for hours. It's very underrated when it comes to any aquatic system. Flow, we get different wave makers, right? That they have different functions, they point in certain directions, and not every tank is suitable for each wave maker. So you kind of have to play with it. And when it comes to adding additional flow, I do have wave makers in my tanks, but they're set at certain levels, so they're not hitting my corals too rapidly at the top. Instead, it's more of cleaning the bottom of the tank and getting all the debris out of there. But for my Acropora tank, man, I've got so much flow in there. You know, I'm constantly picking up frags because they're blowing over, things like that, you know.
So are you partial to the, I'll call them the pump style, like the MP10s, MP40s for flow, or more of the gyri style pumps for flow?
It depends on the tank,
Okay.
right? MP40s and 10s, things like that, I love those. I think that they have great functions to them. However, there's only so much of an area that they can disperse the waves. So it's going to depend on the tank. When it comes to a lot of my frag tanks, I'll use the gyres. It's longer,
Yeah.
and I'm able to get a full even flow throughout my tanks. So I would probably say I'm a little more partial to ice cap gyres than most wave makers. However, I'm open-minded to everything too.
Equal opportunity, whatever you see.
That's it.
Are you running sumps on all the systems?
I run sumps in all my systems, yes.
Okay, and
Yes.
then, so I'm assuming that's where the majority of your filtration is. Is the filtration the same for all the systems in the
It is.
sumps?
It is.
So
It is.
consistency is a good thing in some areas.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, in all the sumps, I'm running actually all ice cap sumps. So that's one of the things that I have uniform.
Okay.
And that has a lot to do with Coral View. You know, they're right here in our backyard, literally, only
Yeah.
one exit away from us. So I've been able to get the ice cap sumps. I like them, just the way that they're set up. It's just more practicality to me. You know, there's other sumps that are out there that have more bells and whistles, and I love them. Look, I'm a fan of the reef hobby. You know, it's just when you do it on a grander scale, there's only so much that you can afford.
Yeah.
You know, so I try to find the best bang for my buck. But when it comes to filtration, everything has filter socks. I also run carbon throughout, you know, all systems. I have bio balls, you know, kind of your usual suspects.
I'm assuming you have skimmers in each of them as
I
well?
don't have a skimmer in one of my systems, which is
Really?
odd, but this is the logic behind it. Because most aquarium systems, you're not taking as much water out on a daily basis, right? You're adding water back, that's through your ATL, but you're not physically scooping out buckets of water,
Right.
you know, to put into bags and put frags in. So the fact that I do that so much is that it keeps my nitrates very low. It keeps all my nutrients low. So I do have to, you know, constantly supplement my nutrients. But if I were to run skimmers, it would deplete everything to such a bottomed out level that I would not have any success. So I can't run skimmers. That's the only thing. It's not that I don't want to, I just can't do it.
That's interesting. That's very different than most of us who are keeping enclosed systems for a longer time because of the setup. Mm-hmm. Your nutrient export is literally through water changes, through selling corals, basically.
Exactly. Now I do one water change, or I do weekly water changes, only 10%. But again, that's to replenish the nutrients in the tank, especially the salt. As I'm taking, you know, water out, we're constantly filling it with auto top-off water, RODI water, so my salinity can go down, you know, after about a week. So I usually want to do water changes weekly.
Yeah, I'm assuming you have to watch your salinity pretty closely.
Oh, yeah.
Because with the 5 different systems as opposed to one clumb together, taking a bunch of corals out of one could really swing the salinity pretty quickly.
1,000%, for sure.
Yeah, that's all right. So let's talk a little bit about the maintenance of it. So you talked about water changing. What are you doing for testing, and how often are you testing?
So I use the AquaSpin. It's the whole testing device.
Yep.
It tests 8 parameters within 2 minutes. I have fully adopted that, first off, for ease. I'm not, sitting here testing for 30 minutes at a time or more with the multiple systems. Instead, I can get rapid results kind of quickly. I try to test probably bi-weekly, sometimes weekly, depending on what I see in the tanks. I'm a firm believer that your eyes can tell you more of what's going on than anything.
Yep.
So I do test relatively often, but one of the things that I think needs to be tested relatively, on a more frequent basis would be alkalinity. That determines a lot in a reef tank, and when that's off or if you have swings, that's really where most of our problems come from. And then I can determine kind of what's going on with my calcium based on my alkalinity, magnesium from there, vice versa, right?
So with the spin test, do you have any other testing that you're using, or is it just the spin test?
Just the spin test.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, as somebody who had the spin test for a while, and I have just one system. I went away from it in particular because I found that it wasn't accurate with 1 or 2 of the parameters.
Really?
Most of it was very accurate. Mm-hmm. I didn't like that the phosphate, accuracy was just 0.1 as to, 0.0 something.
Right, right.
And for whatever reason, mine always read my magnesium in the 1500s, which I knew it was not. Mm-hmm. And just eventually I just said, I'm always checking it with some of the other test kits I have. I finally just said, enough, I'm just going to get rid of the spin test.
Oh yeah, I think redundancy is always great. To have multiples of things is always great. I will check my spin test against, let's say, the aquarium spin tester, and there is a calibration mode in it too. I don't expect it to be 100% accurate every time. It just gives you a great idea on kind of where you're at, and that's really water parameters in general. You need a good range on where you are, and then what you can do to either fix it or, adjust it from there.
What about salinity, since we talked about that? What are you using to test salinity?
Salinity, I went back to refractometers. I feel like that's the safest method. I used to always have the Hannah salinity checker. I don't want to say anything bad about it. It's just not for me anymore. I had a few issues with it, so I just went back to the old school method of the refractometer. I look through it, and I get accurate readings, every time.
You didn't go really old school, so I remember hydrometers to give you.
I do have a hydrometer. I just don't use it all the time.
I'm with you. I think there's something about the speed and ease, but there's something about feeling that you know what the measurement is.
And I do have multiple refractometers, so I do have redundancy there.
Are you sending any of your water out for any type of third-party testing, like ICP or anything like that?
Now that I've moved to this location, I need to send it out. I haven't had the chance yet. It's been almost 2 months. I just haven't gotten the opportunity to do it. But ICP is one of the tests that I would send out on all my systems.
Okay, which kind of gets us into the dosing. So you mentioned you're doing water changes, and actually, let me just ask the question, just to do some ping for somebody advertising. What are you using for your salt for your tank?
For my salt, I use Fauna Marin.
Okay, yeah.
Again, that's another product that I get from Coral View. So this is my philosophy on salt. I prefer to have a lower nutrient load on my salt so I can raise it versus having it too high and I need to take it out.
Down, yeah.
Right? So the good thing with the Fauna Marin, you're always going to get a lower alkalinity reading. Usually a relatively stable calcium reading around 400 or so, but your out's a little bit lower, from 7 to 8. I personally like that because I can judge where I'm at and then add accordingly.
No, that's probably one of the biggest changes. I changed to Tropic Marin recently and am much happier with it for the exact same reason. Raising things up, I like that. Are you adding any other additives to the tanks? Anything at all?
Yeah, so I use Fusion 1 and 2. Anybody that's met me knows that I'm a Brightwell guy.
Okay.
That's my favorite out of any product, their whole line. However, when it comes to calcium and alkalinity, you can really only order it online if you want the Brightwell. You know, as most Aquarius, I'm one of those guys that I'm like, oh man, I'm out. I need to go run to the store. So Fusion 1 and 2 is readily available pretty much everywhere, you know, PetSmart, Petco. So I do that, you know, to make sure if I'm in a jam, this is what I've got, and I want to stay consistent. Now, as far as dosing, I dose trace elements in Acro Power. So I have the minor trace, which is Replenish by Brightwell.
Okay.
And then I use Coral VM by Brightwell as well. That's going to be your vitamins and nutrient load. And the good thing about Coral VM, it has manganese and iron in it. So I really like that because most products don't supplement that into it. And any of the Goniopora collectors out there will know that iron and manganese are your two biggest things that you need to be successful with gonies. So those are my two feeding, dosing things. And then the Acro Power is for the amino acids and growth.
Okay. And have you done anything to test the levels of, I mean, obviously the ICP test, but they don't test amino acids. Do you do anything to test for them?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. It's more of trial and error.
Yeah, I get it. I just curious. So let's talk, we talked a little bit about parameters, but let's delve into a little bit more of the numbers there. Roughly what temperature are you running the tanks at?
I run between 78 to 80.
Okay.
So as midline as possible.
Okay. And are you doing anything, you obviously have heaters for when it gets cool. Are you doing anything to cool the tanks down, or that's just the normal range?
That's the normal. I keep, you know, in this unit right here, I have a nice AC system that was not producing the AC prior to it. So I had to go in and buy a new AC unit because I can't run all these off of chillers. You know, really it's going to be the room temperature is what I need to keep it at, and then I can adjust from there.
Okay.
You know.
And off to my left, I see these giant tanks, which I know is where you're mixing and your RODI water. Do you have an auto top off setup for these, or you're just watching the water and adding it kind of manually as you go?
No, so all the systems run off of the two tanks that you talked about. If we're sitting here in this room, it'll actually run alongside the wall, the full perimeter of the room, and each tank has its own little hose that'll come off into its auto top-off reservoir, and each reservoir has a float valve on it. So the RODI system will kick on as it starts to get low and replenish all of these, and then they will in turn replenish the tanks.
And then is water changes also pre-plumbed for you, or is it something that, you know, you're basically dragging hoses around like most of us are?
Yeah, I use the Python, you know, the one that it's the no spill.
Yeah.
I like to use that, and I'll just run through, hit all the tanks real quick, and then come back and I hook up a hose to my saltwater tank right here and just top them all off as they should be, and you know, try to do it in one swoop.
Okay, awesome. So we talked about temp. You talked a little bit about this in terms of the lower but bringing them up. But what are you running your alk, calcium, and magnesium roughly at?
Yeah, so every tank's going to be different. So if there's anything that I could really get across to anybody, especially someone that's new, is don't panic when it comes to your parameters. Certain tanks, they have more of a bioload, so there's more of an uptick in alkalinity consumption or calcium consumption. So each tank's going to be different. The tanks that I run with Euphilia, that I have all of my Euphilia in, I run a higher magnesium in that because Euphilia thrives with your magnesium level around 1450 to 1500. So I will have a higher magnesium in that tank. The majority, and I say the majority of the tanks, because they are all different, I run calcium around 400 to 450, and then alkalinity is usually around 8 to 9.
Okay.
I like to be on the lower end. However, if a tank, you know, if nothing looks happy, then the desired alkalinity level might be higher. So I may raise it in a specific tank. But the majority of them are on the lower end. Nitrates, that's another one that you know, there's no set number in my mind on what each tank needs to be at. It's going to be on the consumption rate. Now, I don't want to run 0 nitrates, but I don't panic if it gets up to the 50s or anything like that. Usually I'm around anywhere from 10 to 20. However, again, every tank's different.
Yeah.
My SPS tank, I run about 60, just because I do have higher par in there, so they're going to burn through it faster too.
Okay. Phosphate levels, that's one you didn't mention.
Yeah, so phosphates, again, it's going to depend on the tank. Most of them are from 0.02 anywhere to 0.07.
Okay.
I'm not as concerned about the phosphates as I am calcium and alkalinity. Alkalinity is probably, in my eyes, the most important parameter out there to check, you know, constantly, because it will dictate what your calcium level is, and then what your magnesium level is, and then also your nitrate and phosphate consumption.
I will make the comment for those that are watching, and I know we'll talk about this. Your fish load is in general lower than I think most people who have display tanks. So you're probably adding less nutrients through food than most of us are. And you also are doing lots of water changes with selling corals, so
Yes.
that's also helping. Salinity, what do you run your salinity at?
So I typically run it at 1.025. The only one that I go a little bit higher is the Acropora tank at 1.026. Salinity is one of those things that has to be dialed in, you know, but if you drop down to 1.022, it's not the end of the world. If you go to 1.028, again, not the end of the world, but you don't want it to rise or drop any lower than that, you know. So 0.25 is really the baseline, the ideal, but again, everything's different, so I'll add more if I have to in certain systems.
Is there anything else that you're monitoring on a regular basis from a parameter perspective?
No, again, alkalinity is kind of the driving factor for most, so I really want to know what that is. As far as other parameters go, they do matter. However, I'm more concerned if they're in toxic levels, right? So if my phosphates are a little elevated, I know that I have things that can counteract that to get them down. But if they're in, you know, astronomical levels, then there's a problem going on. So we have to figure out what's happening.
Let's talk a little bit about livestock. So as I mentioned earlier, you're a little bit lighter loaded probably in fish than most of us, but do you actually have fish in each and every system here?
I do.
And are they mostly what I'll call them fish that serve a purpose, like
That's
tanks,
it. They're worker fish.
Yeah, they're worker fish.
That's how I view most fish. Is, you know, they have a purpose, they have a job. So that's what's in all my systems. I have a RAS in every system. So even though
is they all the same type of wrasse, different?
no,
ones?
they're all different. So doing low boy tanks, you have a shallower tank. So most wrasses, they like to be in the sand, and you find them jumping fairly often. So I stick to more fairy wrasses. I do have 6-line wrasses, and maybe 1 or 2, but you will notice that they will jump out every now and then. So I have to get another one and put it in there. So fairy wrasses are the ones that I like to stick to, and I have the wrasses to go and eat the various pests that may come in and make sure that corals are clean, things like that. And then every tank's either going to have a tang or rabbitfish, and that's for algae control. I usually like to stick to bristletooth type tangs. They're a little bit smaller and they don't tend to jump as much, you know, as other ones. But that's another reason why I have a lower fish load, is having the shorter tanks. You're always going to have jumpers. It gets expensive after a while, you know. So I try to keep what I need in there, but I don't overdo it or have more fish, you know, that I can look at. Instead, they all serve a purpose.
Do you have the other type of fish that I've seen is the more utilitarian, are either mandarins or pipefish, anything like that in any of the tanks?
No, I'll have a few of the tanks have chromies, some other fish that are not serving a purpose. I have some angelfish, a dottyback, and a few other fish in my SPS system. And although they're not necessarily working, they are by providing that higher nitrate level for the SPS that's going to burn it off faster. So,
and one of the things we talked about before we started the actual interview a little bit, I know you made the change from the full-on store where I know you were selling fish and bringing in fish, and here you're not doing that anymore. This is just a coral business.
That's it.
What? Just curious, what prompted that change?
So coral has always had my heart. Fish was kind of a byproduct of having a retail location. You have to have fish if you're going to have a fish store, right? So I would always have fish, at the store. But again, it wasn't my passion. But also, saltwater fish are harder, right? They will come in with various underlying diseases, things that you don't see, from the naked eye. So you must quarantine them. Having a whole quarantine set up, it's more work. It's more things to monitor, things like that. And I'll be honest, I can tell you almost 700 different names of coral, but fish, man, there's so many different ones. They all react differently, and the amount of diseases that they have, it was overwhelming for me. And I just felt like that was a challenge that I wasn't willing to continue to lose to.
Oh, well, that's very interesting. Well, obviously corals is a big part of your passion.
Yeah.
So let's talk about corals that you have in the tank and the setups that you have. And in particular, I mean, the name, it says it all. It's aquaculture. So talk a little bit about, in fact, why don't we start with that? Tell us a little bit about what are you doing for an aquaculture perspective? Tell me a little bit about that side of it.
All right, so the aquaculture, that's the name that I came up with. It's a play on words. I like puns, I like play on words, different things like that. So I thought it'd be kind of clever. Aquaculturing, corals, is almost like plants. You get a root plant and you'll trim off clippings and then replant them in soil and watch them grow. Almost the same purpose, except when we do that in an aquarium, it gives it higher chances of success because it is quote unquote tank raised and bred, things like that. So the aquaculture came to be because that was a popular term. But I wanted to do a play on words with providing a different culture, right? So when you come in, I am very music influenced. I always have music playing in the background, different posters up on the wall. So I wanted to kind of integrate that into my business as well. So my logo, it's got almost the Jazz Fest theme with it, right? Except it's fish and inverts that are dancing. But again, it's a play on words that our Southern culture that we have here, I wanted to bring it into the aquatic industry and also provide that welcoming culture. So that's where the name came from.
I really like that. And as an aside then, what is your favorite band that you like from a music perspective?
And I have a wide array of bands that I like. My favorite will probably be My Morning Jacket. That's one that I discovered in college. Both of my kids' songs, when they came out the womb, were from that band. My wife and I's wedding song is from that band.
Wow.
So there's a lot of history that comes with them. We've seen them several times, really enjoy it. So that's probably my favorite band.
Okay, my wife's over here on the side. You're seeing it, Brian's seeing it, but so my wife's from Louisville, Kentucky, which is where Morning Jacket got their start. And so she saw them very early on when they were still, bar band type thing. And
that is so cool. I saw them in May at Jazz Fest.
Yep.
So I had to do that. It was during my birthday, and that was my present, was to go see My Morning Jacket at Jazz Fest.
We were there for that.
Nice. Phenomenal band.
Phenomenal band.
Yeah.
All right. So are you keeping the corals, so you have all the zoanthids in one system, Euphyllia in another, I'll call them meaty corals, more of the traits, brains, that type of stuff, and then SPS all in each in their own system? Is that how you kind of separate things out?
Yeah, it's kind of how I've separated it. So one system is primarily Euphyllia. We're going to have our torches, hammers, frog spawns, things like that. Now I do have some corals that are in there that are not. Most corals can live in a mixed reef system. So as long as parameters are kind of within a realm, then we're okay with it. The system that I have sitting here next to me, one side of it is going to have all zoas, gonies. We're going to have favia, things like that. Things that like more of phytoplankton, almost dirtier water, stuff like that. Now I do have some SPS in the system too, that's on the opposite side. But that is what I call my show SPS. So I will grow it in my aquapore system, color it up, and once it's ready, I'll bring it over to this to get it into that lower par that it can adapt to when it gets into an Aquarius system. So that's kind of, I would say, a part of my quality control process is making sure that it can come from a higher par system into a higher nutrient load in a lower par system and still thrive. So although I do adjust certain things and certain systems will be a little different, that is kind of the philosophy on why I do these systems separate. And then anemones, they're by themselves. Those guys, man, I just don't want the rest of my coral or livestock to be dead in case they get into a wave maker or something like that. So they're completely separate.
Well, they've also been known to wander around tanks, just stinging
Often.
things along
Yes.
the way.
Yes.
So, are there any corals that you feel particularly proud of in the aquaculture, setup that you have here that you would want to highlight?
So I would say all of them, but what I really pride myself in is euphilia, and that being with the quality perspective, right? I feel like I run an inexpensive shop, but with higher quality. Now, it may not be the cheapest. However, I won't sell you something that isn't fully fleshed or has an infection or anything like that, right? So euphilia, all my corals I run through a quarantine process. I dip them in multiple solutions, watch them for a period of time, inspect them for different pests or anything like that. And then I do a monthly dip on everything too,
okay.
Just in case, look, if anything did make it past the first wall, I want to make sure that I catch it again. So that is another one of the things that I do. But with euphilia, I wanted to make sure that may not be the cheapest, but you are going to get something that has a full flesh base. When it goes into your system, you're not concerned that it may bail out or catch brown jelly disease or anything like that. My new pride and joy, though, is acros. Acros took me a few years to manage and get better at. My aquapora tank, the SPS dominant tank, the biggest one that I have here, I let run for 8 months before I put anything in it. I had fish in it, but acros, they take a well-established system and a system that's very consistent in order to, do well with.
Yeah.
So I lost a lot to begin with, but I've gotten so much better at it, I feel, that's where a lot of my pride and joy comes in. Most of the coral that I have here never looked like this when it first came in. I pride a lot in these lights and also the different additives that I add to the water and pulling those colors out. There's not, I don't feel like as many people focus on the coloration and the richness of the colors to really present your product, right? I won't sell you something that just got here because I feel like the coloration isn't there yet. And if it sits in these systems for 2 months or so, you'll see I have PC Rainbow, came in just dark red. You'll see the clippings or frags that I have of it. It's bright yellow, gold,
Yeah.
reds, burgundies that swirl around the pieces. And again, that's a lot with the lights and the Brightwell system that I like to use. That Replenish and Coral VM, it gives you a lot of rich coloration and gives you a better product.
I want to go back to something you said on the euphyllias, because I know people would ask this question. So you do dipping. What are you using for your dips for pest prevention?
Yeah, so when coral first comes in, I use a harsher dip, right? I use Revive by Two Little Fishes. It's a little more concentrated from what I've seen versus Coral MD or Medicoral by Brightwell. I like it because it is harsher on the pests that are there. However, I can't use that dip when it comes to SPS. It's too harsh, and it'll actually strip it of bacteria that it has on there, and I've seen a lot of SPS die from doing that. So I'll back up a little bit. Every time I get coral in, whether it's SPS, LPS, whatever it may be, I will do an hour-long dip in regular salt water that it comes in, but then flatworm RX. So a lot of these, they have flatworms on them. I want to make sure that I'm going through getting that off first, because your 15-minute dip doesn't necessarily affect the flatworms the same. So I will do that first and then transfer them over into a revived dip. Now, if I am dipping my corals, let's say once a month, or if I see that there is some sort of sickness with it, right? A bacterial infection. 9 times out of 10, I use Medicoral from Brightwell. Reason being, it has Lugol solution in it. So it will help with that antiseptic aspect to remedy any of those bacterial infections that you may see.
Okay. You are bringing in corals from outside, so to speak. Are you
Correct.
bringing them aquacultured in, or are you actually getting some that are coming, so to speak, out of the ocean, and then you're, adapting them here?
Right. So I do get wild caught things that have been maricultured, have sat in
Yep.
other tanks. So I will get those. I tend to stay away from any euphilia that is wild. Reason being, they're just ridden with pests. Most of the skeletons have flatworms that have already dug themselves into them. So, trying to get that out, it's a longer process. It takes me a lot longer, several months, to really work on those corals. And, when corals die, that costs money to all of us,
Yeah.
right? So I try to stick to aquacultured euphilia. Now, aquapora is kind of hard to do that, I try to as much as possible, but mostly it's maricultured colonies that I'll take in, let them sit in my tanks for 2 to 3 months before I frag them, and then I'll frag them from there, make sure that they are going to live. The SPS that I do sell, it's already spread onto the frag tile or plug. Again, I want to make sure that you have a high success rate
Right.
than something that was just fragged and may get some sort of bacteria in there that could end up killing it.
All right, awesome. Are you doing any type of inverts? Do you have snails or anything else like
Oh,
that
yeah.
from a maintenance perspective?
Oh yeah, all my tanks have a ton of cleanup crew. Again, you need something that's going to work for you. I've got all 3 levels taken care of, per se. So you have Nasaria snails that clean underneath your sand. On top of my sand, I have tiger sand conches.
Okay, yeah.
Those are some of my favorite. I recommend them to anybody that has a tank. They will clean the top of your sand bed. They will eat detritus. They'll even eat dinos, which is pretty cool. And then, for your walls, your rocks, I'll have mostly Trocus snails because they can flip themselves back over.
Yeah.
Astrias are great, but the moment they go on their back and you don't catch them, they're done with. So I'm a firm believer in cleanup crew. I also have some urchins as well. So if I have tanks that may get more hair algae than others, or if I had a problem with it in the past, you'll notice an urchins in there too.
What kind of urchins, just to be curious?
Usually pincushion urchins, royal urchins, ones that aren't going to get too big, but all urchins have a mind of their own too, so they're going to be wearing some of the coral.
Yeah.
But also I do have red leg and blue leg hermit crabs. I tend to stick to more red legs because when you get them, they're larger in size, and I found that larger animals do better in tanks because they're not getting picked on or bullied, things like that. So you'll see that I have a lot more red leg hermit crabs than I do blue because I just got them at a bigger size and I felt like they would last longer than most of the smaller blue legs.
What about feeding? What do you feed the fish, and do you do anything to feed the corals?
So again, this is another one of those things that I learned over time. And by trial and error, a lot of reading and learning corals. So I do the replenishment of trace minerals and vitamins, let's say every other day throughout all the tanks. When it comes to the rest of it, as far as feeding with like a dry food, such as a powdery food. I will do that probably bi-weekly. Reason being, a lot of that food is higher in nitrate consumption, or I'm sorry, nitrate loads, so it will dirty up your tank a little bit more. And 90% of corals are photosynthetic, so they don't all need to be fed. We like to feed them. It does help with their growth, but I've learned with coloration standpoint that if you are just replenishing their trace elements, minerals, things like that, and then feeding on that bi-weekly basis, that I develop better coloration because the zooxanthella isn't as condensed in creating those dull colors, your browns and things like that. So I don't feed as often. Now with the fish, depending on the age of the fish, right? So if I have a smaller tang in my tank, I'm gonna feed that on a daily basis. But if I have larger tanks that they're workhorses, they're constantly looking at algae or looking for it, I typically feed all the tanks Kelsey Guidry's reef food every 3 days or so. So again, Kelsey is one of my favorite people, but the products that he puts out is high quality. For frozen food, what we find a lot is preservatives, right? So a lot of people will say, you know, I've been feeding every day, but I'm starting to get brown stuff all over my tank. Well, it's the preservatives that are in there that if you don't strain them out, that you're gonna have them go into your tanks. Kelsey is 100% natural. When he gets his ingredients for the food, it's all processed, cut up, put together that same day, and then he'll usually package it and I'll get it within a week or so. So it's like having fresh tuna from the sea versus tuna out of a can.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I feed my fish. I do put amino omega from Brightwell, so I can have those omega fatty acids for the fish. I'll let my food soak in that first before I feed it to the fish.
Okay. So no phytoplankton at all in any of your systems?
I do. I did forget to mention that. So
Okay.
I have a ton of copepods. All my tanks are like to the max with copepods. So I do feed phytoplankton to all the tanks, and that is something that I will mix in with the food that I feed my fish. So I'm constantly adding it into my tanks every 3 or so days. Now when it comes to the tank that I have most of my zoas in, I will feed more phytoplankton to those tanks.
And are you purchasing the phytoplankton or are you making it yourself?
I purchase it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have too much of a workload as it is that I didn't want to dive into that aspect.
Okay, fair enough. Let's kind of wrap up with some of the kind of overarching questions. What's one of the biggest challenges you've had along the way with the tanks or with the business?
I would say with tanks, one of the biggest challenges was chasing numbers. I was always trying to get those perfect numbers, and it wasn't until I realized that stability is the key, not necessarily the parameter numbers, did I start having more success. So I also didn't panic as much. If I saw that my alkalinity was low, I didn't try to rapidly raise it like
Right.
a lot of us want to do. We need to see something happen immediately to know that it's okay. However, when we do that with reef systems, it'll actually backfire to you. So you want to slowly raise things. That was one of my biggest issues that you know I was having trouble with. But once I got out of the don't panic mode, just try to keep stability and then adjust from there, that's when I really started having success. As far as the business goes, I guess the biggest challenge would be competing against online vendors. Mm-hmm. So we're in a society where we're looking for the best deals, and the best deals don't always come with the best product, right? So although I may be $10 more expensive on one of my items versus another distributor, hopefully you have the knowledge that I went through all the processes, made sure that you have something that's going to live and really thrive in your tank before it came out of my system. So that might be one of my biggest challenges is, you know, competing with others. However, it's just, you know, I have faith in what I do and the product that, you know, I put out, that I think word of mouth and reputation really will overcome that.
Okay, awesome. What are your future plans? What do you got? What's the next big thing coming here?
So hopefully I would get to a larger setup that I originally wanted to do before doing retail. So I would like to be a distributor to retail stores. Again, being I would like to have a better product, a higher quality product that goes out to the stores, and also get a larger location that I can start aquaculturing the majority of the products that I have. But that takes more space, more room, more tanks to house those items and grow them for months, years, before I am able to harvest off of them. I don't know why that light went out.
That caught my eye too.
Right? So that's eventually what I want to get to. But right now I'm kind of regressing a little bit, taking baby steps to get back up there. I'm focused on my family more than anything right now. And I want to make sure that I have the time for them. When I owned the store, I was married to it 7 days a week, you know, up there till 3, 4 in the morning most times, just making sure that everything was presentable. All the coral got the attention that it needed. I was learning more about fish that I wasn't as experienced in. So I fully see this, you know, turning back into a larger operation, but just not a retail operation. We will continue to do retail like online, and you'll have local pickups and things like that. But I want to have it in a grander scale to keep the vision of the name that I came up with. I want to provide a good culture for the aquarium hobby. And with that being, I want to have good aquaculture pieces and really have sustainability for the future and for our ocean.
Awesome. Louisiana. So my Louisiana specific question is about power. We live with the threat of a hurricane a lot of the time of the year, and that can often come with power loss. So
Yes.
do you have anything for a kind of a backup? What happens if power goes out here? Because obviously you have a lot invested in the corals and livestock.
Yes, yes. So again, philosophy, strategy. One of the things that I do every year is right before hurricane season, I don't order any more coral. So I will continue to sell, but I don't replenish just in case we do have power outages, losses, things like that. Backup batteries are great, but they're not great for 4 or 5 days at a time if we do have a major storm. I was hoping to get a whole house generator before this hurricane season, but it just wasn't in the cards. So I will have some generators here. However, if it is a storm that I feel like is going to be large enough and it may knock power out for a period of time, I do have other stores and friends in the hobby that I will take these corals to and house them that are northern in the state to where they're not going to get affected by power outages and stuff like that. So the week prior, you'll see me emptying the tanks, bringing them over, just, you know, to be on the safe side.
Remote backup is the way I think of
That's
it in the
it.
IT
That's
world.
it. Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice that you feel like you've gotten along the way?
Best piece is the same thing that I'll kind of touch on, the mantra. Don't panic. That's it. We want to see results immediately. It's not that, right? We have systems that these minerals have to go through, and it takes time for elevated readings to come back. So don't rush it. Just take your time with it. Enjoy the whole process. It's not an easy process. It's not for everybody. But as long as you don't panic and read 10 things on that say, oh no, everything's going to die, take it all out the tank, don't worry about that. Look, I ran tanks that had calcium at 650, and I had coral in there. They were new tanks, but I didn't panic. I knew, okay, I know how to level them out. Not everything's going to die. Let's just adjust and slowly get it back to where it needs to be. So don't panic is my best thing that I could tell anybody.
Okay, and then my final question, what is it that you want to share with people out there that I haven't asked about that you would want them to know?
That's a good question.
That was the same reaction that Kelsey Gidger gave me when I asked it.
Yeah. I guess one of the big factors is lighting. don't skimp on lighting. You know, lighting is what powers these corals. It's what provides balanced tanks. We need to make sure that our photo period is long enough, but it's also the quality of light distribution that we're worried about. A lot of lights, or setups I should say, not the lights themselves, but setups, they have inadequate lighting. So you'll see folks that will say, you know, look, I had a lot of trouble. I got out of the hobby because I wasn't having success. Well, what are our root causes to it? First, we're going to look at water parameters. After water parameters, it's lighting. After lighting, it's going to be flow, right? So that's kind of how I break things down. But most of the time, it is going to be lighting, especially with corals. We'll see that with inadequate lighting, you will have death happen. You'll have coloration start to dull out, things like that.
Okay. Well, look, Brian, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. This is one of probably the highlights that I've had throughout the time that I've spread across the strait. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
very much.
Really appreciate you.
Really enjoyed this. Thank you again.
Yes, sir.